Welcome everyone to the last week of our festival, of the Creative Industries Festival at Oxford Brookes. And today's event, You Can't Play Mass If You Fray Powder. This festival has been all about celebrating the creative industries and creativity, as well as thinking about the inequalities that are inherent to them. And I think the title of this event highlights both these aspects, and it directs our attention to Caribbean art forms. Just to explain, it refers to the traditional masquerade and Trinidadian carnival, where sailors in sailor masks wield their talcum powder and throwing it on spectators and other masqueraders alike. So in other words, we cannot talk about the beauty and the joy of Caribbean art forms without also talking about the history, the power of relations, the struggle and the politics, as well as our own roles in this as participants and bystanders. So before we get started, just let me quickly repeat some of the housekeeping. I know a lot of you have already attended other events. The session is recorded and will be made publicly available on our website at a later stage. So if you prefer not to be included, just turn off your camera. You can still share your thoughts, your comments and questions in the chat. Please do make sure to use the chat, introduce yourself, let us know where you are located right now, also how you heard about the event. We also have used a Padlet to share and connect, so you can introduce yourself, your project, your organizations. We will share the link in the chat as well for you to see. And we've had some lively discussions then, also some networking going on. So please do join us there. At the end of the session, we will also share a feedback form. Please do share your experiences. For us, this is really important. Always good to know more about your experience. Right, so in our roundtable today, we will discuss Caribbean legacies and creativity in Oxford. And I would like to thank our participants for being here today at this first edition of the Creative Industry Festival. Euton Daley from the Unlock the Chains Collective, Amantha Edmead from Kuumba Nia Arts, and Haroun Shah from the Nostalgia Steelband and Notting Hill Carnival Village. Thank you so much. And in a moment, we will hear more about your background or your relationship to the creative industries, your experiences. But first, as a panel, we have agreed to use this platform to commemorate George Floyd's murder that happened 1 year ago. And with this, I'm just going to hand over to Euton and Amantha for the next couple of minutes.
No guilt in life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand.
Why are our parents burying their children? Why? I know, we know there must be a better way to live, to value life, to love and to be loved, a better quality of life. So why? Why do all our heroes die? Why do all our heroes die imprisoned, impoverished? Why do all our heroes die young? Why do all our heroes die in vain?
I need you to help me help me breathe. Whoa. I need you to help me
breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Noah built the ark as God sent the floods. As the torment of abuse rains down, who do we turn to? Where do we go? Who is our saviour? Where is our bulletproof vest to navigate this cruel, evil world? Our superhero shield to protect us from the wrongs of our enemies. I can't breathe. I can't breathe, can't breathe, can't breathe. I can't
I need you to help me breathe. Need you to help me breathe. Whoa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amantha. Thank you, Euton. Thank you very much for starting our session today like this. Today is the first anniversary of George Floyd's murder, and at 6 p.m. people across the country, across the UK, will take the knee to commemorate the murder, as well as to affirm our stance in resistance against racism. So for those who are located in Oxford, it's at 5:30 that organizations such as Stand Up to Racism, Roads Must Fall, call you to join them and for the commemoration at One Square. We also have various events happening across London, of course, and other places. So what happened on this day last year sparked protests and solidarity in many places. We have activists as well affiliated or linked to Oxford Brookes, just thinking of the young activist who is at the moment in a critical condition, who is a graduate of Oxford Brookes University. We also want to send our thoughts and wishes for her quick and full recovery as well. So white supremacy and resistance against it as a system manifests differently across the world. So we have our UK context and what's happening here. And when we think of the Caribbean as a region, it is historically situated at the beginning of European expansionist colonialism, of global capitalism and modern racism. And the Caribbean is not only a geographical location, it is a space that is constituted by its multi-ethnic diversity, its primary and secondary diasporas and transnational media circuits. So it's literally impossible to capture the Caribbean in any one way or even speak about it as a singular. And from here, let us now focus on your contributions to the arts and the cultural sector, your path in the creative industries and your experiences. So Euton and Amantha, could you share, to get this started, how have you become involved in the creative economies, in the arts? Can you tell us more about your background and path?
Oh, he's starting with me. Hello, everybody. I'm originally from Oxford and I'm back here. So I was one of those people who just loved performance and drama from a really young age. I was a 70s baby. So went to a Methodist church which encouraged performance, recitation, taking services, then did everything I could through school, etc. Both my parents are from St. Kitts, so there was lots of elements of reciting. Very Caribbean tradition, reciting as opposed to just straight performing. And then after the very typical route of GCSEs and A levels, then I went to drama school and skipped out as a jobbing actress. And that was my passion first, to perform and act. And it's over the last 20 years where it's been more about creating my own work. And Kuumba Nia Arts has been going for 11 years now. And I started to develop my own work because I felt there were stories that I wasn't seeing, and the forms and how the stories were told were... It was a space where I could really do that with more of a Caribbean lens, really. So I don't know. I want to keep it short and hand over to Euton. So that was my journey.
Hi, everybody. I was born in Jamaica, came to the UK 1966, nearly age 10. And my journey into the creative industry and world was by default, really, age 16. Drama teacher asked me if I would audition for a school play because I needed somebody to be in it, a male to be in it, and also to be the lead. It was a musical theatre piece. Drama was something that none of us did properly in our school. It was something, it was a lesson that you mucked about in, you messed about in. So I was quite surprised that he saw something of some talent of some kind in me to ask me to do this. So I did that, and that's where things took off, got the bug, joined National Birmingham Youth Theatre, then went to drama school, and have been working since. Yeah, that's my journey. I work now as a freelancer, working with companies, and as well as creating my own work, very much based on the black experience, because 40 years on working professionally in the industry, there is still so many stories and forms that's just not being utilized, and so much of our history just not being told through that medium. So that's something I've been focusing on for the last 7 years.
And I've got a tiny little point, thinking of what you just said and what we're commemorating today also, is one of the reasons why my little 9-year-old self loved performance was because I could be anybody. So I think there's something in there, as growing up as African Caribbean in Oxford, on stage, anything could happen, whereas in real life that wasn't the same.
Yeah.
So that was just my point.
Thank you so much. So I will hand over to Haroun Shah now, and invite you to share a little bit about your journey and background. Let me just,
Thank you very much, Hannah. Unlike both Euton and Amantha, I came via a complex route. and for that reason, I hope you don't mind if I just use a few slides just to show my journey. So let me just see if I can share the screen, and tell me if you can see this. Are you able to see that first slide?
not as yet.
Any luck now?
Not as yet. We had it before. Apologies about that.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Yes, perfect.
Are you able to see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I came a year after Euton. I came in 1967, and I was already at school. I was playing steelband. I was lucky to be born in an area where a lot of the developments took place, and from a little kid, it always fascinated me. But my life really in school, there was only one thing I could do, and it wasn't music, it was science. I did it quite naturally. I couldn't do languages or anything else like that. I just failed miserably. I think it's very well known, as I'm sure you know, that at the end of World War II, we saw a large migration from the Caribbean in response to jobs being advertised in the mother country.
I'm so sorry, Haroun. I think I just, by mistake, pressed the mute button. Could you unmute yourself? And we didn't see the slides. They kind of disappeared. So sorry to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. And you would have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Can you see the slides now?
No, we see your desktop, but not the slides.
Oh. Any better?
No, we still see the documents. Probably if you stop sharing and try. Yeah, now we see them. Yes, wonderful. Perfect.
Okay, and I'm not sure why this is happening. Okay, let's see. So that journey from Trinidad, they were, I think everybody's familiar with the ducking of the Windrush on June the 21st, in which three great Calypsonians were on board. Lord Kitchener, of course, who sang the famous "London is the Place for Me," that's used in so many films and in so many events in London. Lord Beginner, who sang so much about cricket and early life in London. The one perhaps that might be new to many people, and was even new to me at that time, was Lord Woodbine, because he smoked the Woodbine cigarettes and he was given that name. Now, I had a place at the university myself to go to McGill in Canada, and I chose to come to the UK basically because I was driving and dragged by the music of the Beatles. And if you don't know this story, Lord Woodbine on board that ship was the person that started the Beatles. James McGrath's PhD thesis brought that story out. And he was the person, they played a little bit of steel pan in the beginning, but he taught them to play guitar. They went on to Hamburg with him before Brian Epstein did the rest of took them on their further journey. So I arrived 1967. My two pieces of instrument luggage was my guitar on my shoulder and my pan. And my pan, in those days, they didn't have a case. And the common joke was, when you arrive in London, we had dustbins here, why do you bring your own? It turned out to be the sort of story that you hear all the time. Now, to divide my career and how I got there, I could do this in three. It looks a complex side. It's quite simple. To the left side of it, there is I started working at the University of London, the London Hospital Medical College in 1972. And I worked myself through the ranks for about 25 years there, through senior lectureship, a reader, and eventually a chair. I moved on to Public Health England in 1997. And the reason for doing that was that I wanted to work nearer towards patients and be directly involved in actually helping people to get, and as we've seen so much of PH in the news these days with regard to coronavirus. But just one little thing I want to point out on that, I'm not going to say anything about any of this, but just when I arrived there in 1997, it took between 1 week to 3 months to diagnose an infection and a disease. And as everybody knows, if you can do that diagnosis step very early, you can save that person's life, you can make that patient better very quickly. As disease progresses, it becomes a really major problem to deal with. And so long story, through somebody I met through Carnival, the famous Franz Hillenkamp, who would have been given the Nobel Prize for this work, but he died before it. The technology is called mass spectrometry, which is one of the things I did, and it's not just DNA, but it's on proteins as well. To cut a really long story short, diagnosis, we brought it up to between 2 to 3 minutes. And this is what most hospitals are using these days. And I left there in 2015 and went across to Middlesex University, which is a 10 minutes away walk. And it was there, although my position, I have a chair in science, it was there, I was lucky to meet people in the Faculty of Arts. And now I teach in the Faculty of Arts and Creative Industry for 50% of my time. Just going to the next slide very quickly. Yeah, can you see this one? Okay, I just have the flyers of 3 conferences held on the front there. And one of the things I want, you'll see we use the images of the technology at the time to advertise the conferences. What I did with every one of these meetings is there were 22 we organized until the lockdown annually. It was such a growing technology. It was so important that people came from all parts of the world I brought out Nostalgia Steel Band, and often that's what people talked about, not the content of the conference. When they went back home, they saw a steel band for the first time, and it had a dramatic impact on linking the two to eventually, it allowed me to then go on and started organizing steel band conferences almost along the same line. And one of the reasons I did it was because although we published a lot of our work, we found that conferences really had a major impact on getting to the audience. And we use images this time. This is one on the left-hand side here where you see Nostalgia on Juve morning. And this is when the powder was thrown more than anything else. And we created these images to make this. I'll stop at this point, but the one emphasis behind all of this is that, and the major trust in which I'm hoping we've been going for the last 10 years, is to actually take all that information coming from universities, link it with the voices from the ground, the people that are playing the pans, the people that are making the masks, singing the calypsos, and actually link these two together. And that's where the emphasis is. I'll leave it at that time for the time being.
Thank you so much, Haroun, for this insight into your life and career and path, really, that led you to where you are now. And you've told us about your current projects, about the conferences that are going on, the next one coming up in October. We'll also share this link. You can also follow the Creative Industries Festival on Twitter and Facebook. We can share these links as well to these events with you. What I would like Amantha and Euton probably to tell us a little bit more about now is their current projects. What are you doing at the moment? Tell us a little bit in more detail what you're doing. Yeah, thank you.
I'm currently working on a project called Still Breathing with the Unlock the Chains collective. And some of the medley at the start of the session today was taken from that project we're working on at the moment. Still Breathing came about from being involved last year with all the protests and demonstrations going on, and all the conversations that one was involved in, conversations that people overheard, all the placards that you saw, all the statements that were made on these placards. And there was an overwhelming sense for me that people like myself, of that sort of older generation, had become a bit jaded with it all. We've been here before, we're going through it again, and nothing's changed. If you look at all the reports that's happened throughout the years, the latest being the Lama report or the Windrush scandal report, nothing in those reports have been acted on to make a difference and to make a change. And so there's a sense of fatigueness and tiredness. And at the same time, there's this raw energy and vibrant energy from young people who are saying, we're not taking any more of this. And not only are we not taking it, we don't want your platitudes of words. We want action. We need something to happen that results in something. And there was just that lovely energy that they had that pulled us along and took us with them, and we ended up supporting and doing their drive. And I've taken that back into other things that's happening here in Oxford. That sense of action needs to happen, and we don't want words anymore. We want things to be real, to be concrete. So the show mixes the thing I've been working on around for the last 7 years around performance, poetry and spoken word, and it fuses that with dance, with music, African drums, steel pans in there as well, and just to fuse a different way of making theatre, making work that fuses all those different art forms and traditions as well, to make something different, to make something new. And that's Still Breathing.
That is.
I'm still breathing.
He's still breathing, I'm still breathing. And that's going to lead to some sort of performance, isn't it?
Yeah. Hopefully we'll do an R&D showing in June this year somewhere, trying to find a theatre venue at the moment. And then the full production will be on next year.
Okay. COVID has just affected everybody. So at the moment, the project that I'm working on is Sold, the story of Mary Prince, which we started and we're going to tour last year. Then realities of COVID and Black Lives Matter has happened. And here we are looking to tour again. So we will be touring, doing a short mini tour of festivals and events in July, and then looking to tour again in the autumn and spring of next year, and hopefully take it internationally. So Mary Prince in some ways is linking very much into what we're talking about today, with her being Caribbean as it was, growing up in Bermuda, spending her enslavement period, a lot of it in Antigua before coming here. Mary Prince, for people who don't know, was the first African heritage woman to petition Parliament for freedom. She published a book, and hers was the first female narrative from the British experience of enslavement. And the piece of theatre, we hope, uses her words and her energies, but we also fuse that with African drumming, dance and song, and so it links the Caribbean to the African roots, and also very much hopefully ask questions about how history impacts us today. And that's the project that I'm involved with at the moment.
Yeah. And also collectively we're involved in a newly formed group, the African Heritage Community Association, which came about again as a result of last year, with all the various grassroots community organisations, African heritage community organisations here in Oxford, coming together under one umbrella, so that we could actually be much more effective working together as a collective unit. We're still doing our own projects and our own organisations, but this collective hopefully will move things forward, taking on board the energies of those young people that says action needs to happen. And one of the things that we're advocating for and has started to work around trying to set up and develop, and Brooks is supporting us around this as well, is an African heritage cultural education school, a Saturday school, where young people not only learn about their culture and their history, but they also learn about the cultural forms as well, and practice them and develop them, and also the fact that we're not we're not one-dimensional sense. The fact that many of the young people here were born here in Oxford themselves, they have their own traditions that's come out of whatever it is that influenced them or that they're interested in, and how that fuses the new work that they will make, so that the future generation will be making something different from what we're making now, fused with their cultural traditions and knowledge, but with the new things that's coming up and the things that they're interested in.
And we're particularly using arts as well as more traditional subjects, because I'm linking to what Haroun was just talking, the transformational power of art and what that can do, and hopefully what that will bring in each individual. We're doing lots of nodding. I think we're done.
Thank you so much for the insights and for sharing the plans for the future, but also what you've been doing and doing at the moment. And I think it's important for us to focus on Oxford as well now, and really talk about what is happening here and can happen. And it's interesting every single time that I talk to people, I realize more and more how Oxford is also tied to a lot of history of when we just think of Trinidad, Eric Williams spending time in Oxford. We have Stuart Hall, we have Nepal, for example, all these people who have been very influential in the arts and creative industries, and have contributed also to the city of Oxford in that way. And Oxford Brookes, of course, as an institution that can offer a platform and can help to develop, but also I think what is part of it is to critically reflect on the role of the institution as such. And I think it was wonderful how you said it's time that something has to happen, and I really think that this pressure is working, or hopefully that it's going to go away from these symbolic performances to actual plans and as you said, institutions for learning, for example, that are provided then. So I was wondering if we can talk about Oxford a little bit more as a place or space of diversity, but also constituted by coloniality and raciality. And if you have anything you would like to say on that. Oh, Haroun, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah. We can't hear you at the moment. I'm not sure, Haroun.
Yeah. Is that all right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hannah, I think there's a lot that London has gone through that I think would benefit very much in seeing the story of what London has faced, that Oxford can benefit. I think I learned a great deal from. One of the things has been, of course, the Steelband movement, which has been extremely powerful in changing a lot of the culture, a lot of the bad feelings. I mean, if you remember, at the time Nostalgia was formed as a steel band in 1964, there were race riots, there were houses burning in the streets everywhere, there were placards. I remember looking for accommodation and you see signs with no blacks, no dogs, no Irish wanted. We've had to fight this a great deal. Oxford has, from what I can see, a very diverse community. It's had a history of a lot of industry. They had brought a lot of immigrants. It's almost the same reason that London had this same problem to deal with as well, and getting that acceptance. And Carnival, particularly at Notting Hill Carnival, has played a great part in breaking down, using the arts to break down the phobia. It's still a battle we have today. It's still, I don't think, well-funded. It still needs a lot of acceptance. But you have, I mean, people there, one of your Liberal MPs like Lila Moran, who I think is a great, great person to have. Against that, you have a background of Cecil Rhodes, who only a few days ago, it was advertised that they will not remove the statue. And therefore, you have that embedded sort of history inside there. I think today, where the problem we face is as Euton said, it's not a question, it's a question of, yes, we are still breathing, but it's more than that. It is more than that. There is real anger and really frustration within the community that we are not moving as fast as we should be moving. And that excerpt, that small 30-second, we might not have time to play it, of Priti Patel, where government employs the people of color that literally work against us. And the Calypsonian Alexander the Great put that into really fantastic words of what the Caribbean community and Black and Asians feel about her, and realize that we have to work much further than this. There is another way that we can go about this, and that is literally taking the music from house to house, doors, streets, and so on, which is what we've been doing. And in the recent, some of you might have seen the BBC broadcasting our performance at St. Charles Hospital, in which the question was asked, why are so many people, Black and Asian people in London and in the country, refusing to take the vaccine? And the answers that are coming across is not a simple answer. The answer is one of distrust, one that they still feel up to today. And we felt we could use Steelband to break that phobia. And we started in March. The uptake was only 40%. 2 weeks ago, slowly it moved up to about 70, 80%. And I'm pleased to say North Kensington in the borough of Kensington and Chelsea, it became the first borough in the whole of the UK where the Black community is actually surpassed the white community in vaccination uptake. That was about 4 or 5%. It's about 95%. But there was a lot of hard work to do that, and you had to reach the community. That model could be copied in many places as well. I've lost sound.
Oh no, he's back.
Amantha and Euton, would you like to respond? Would you like to add to this?
Yes, very much support a lot of what you, in fact, support all you've just said there, Haroun. When you've got the latest government report that says there is no institutional racism being touted, and then you've got the reality of life on the ground and seeing the things that are still happening that are stemming from racist attitude and racist actions, the sense that it's not, these things aren't one-off, that they have been going for a very, very long time. I don't know if anyone saw the BBC, a very British scandal about the education of educational subnormal schools for black pupils, and although those ESN does no longer exist, the disproportionate number of black children who are still excluded from school or expelled from school is staggeringly high. So here in Oxford, one of the things we're trying to do, as I mentioned earlier, is to try and set up this Saturday school to give that sense of pride back again to people, and also a sense of belonging, as well as understanding one's culture, about knowing that we aren't as backward as we are led to believe, and that we can achieve, and that we do have people who don't get recognized in our community for the value and the work that they do. I think fundamentally for me, until the city addresses the fact that its legacy, if you like, of slavery, its legacy of colonialism and oppression, nothing will happen. And so there is also a move from people to actually start to look at a social justice model of reparation. And often people get confused with reparation, thinking that all it is that we just give lots of money back to people. But what reparation does, it starts for you to begin to understand and address your history, the history of why things have happened and the part that you played in it, and also to research that wealth that has come from that whole history of oppression. And where places like Bristol and Glasgow have started that, conversations have become very different in those places, and people are working in a much different way. And you know, Oxford University at the same time is saying it won't take down the Cecil Rhodes statue, at the same time is lauding itself and applauding itself on the fact that its diversity quota is up for admission into its colleges, because it looks at things and stop looking at things in quota, but looks at the content of what things are. And I think that's one of the ways in which art plays a huge part in helping us to do that. As Haroun was saying about the Calypsonian song, it starts to help you to get less defensive about something and look at something in a much empathetic way. And the art is very good at that and very strong at doing that, so that we can actually say, yes, we're not saying it is our individual fault, but that we are privileged from what has happened, and we have gained privilege and we have gained wealth from the oppression of others. And that oppression, unfortunately, isn't something that has happened in the past. It is still happening now, because the whole way in which the world has been constructed has been around race, and demarcation of race, and that demarcation puts white as the default, white as the top of that pyramid, and shadings of white down to black going down. So those at the bottom of the pile are always being affected by that notion continually still. Yeah.
I'm going to echo lots of what Euton has just said, and while you were speaking and looking at that, I was thinking very much as lots of the work that started to happen now about decolonializing curriculums and ideas and spaces almost would, if you were for them people to honestly, like the main universities, to start to actually have a wider perspective than the perspective that they have held for centuries, and the perspective of the world that has been then manufactured and shipped out around the world. It's that way of actually really looking honestly at it. And everything that you've said about the school systems and arts and how that can change. There have been so many groups that have started or found life, sadly, in the last year because of everything that's happened. I also work with a group called Mothers for Justice, which is now starting to give a voice for the young people involved in the criminal justice system in Oxford particularly, and their families, and trying to hear their stories. And we've been doing things like care talks where the first starting point is us hearing the stories so people can understand what is happening to people and what has happened recently and what's happening today. And we did one at the weekend, and a young man was speaking, he's only 18, was speaking about his experiences in Oxford schools at the moment. And even though I grew up here and I'm very passionate about all of this work, some of his words still surprise me, of the sense of growing up in Oxfordshire, being in a place where, as I was in some places, the only African heritage person, and everything that was then happening to him as to the teachers' expectations, people's expectations of him. And one of the heartbreaking things he said was him going to this small Oxfordshire town and seeing another African heritage boy and going up to speak to him in their teenage years, and the other boy being really wary of somebody who looks like him approaching him. So that whole thing of fear and what society has done about racism being ingrained in all of us, regardless of our racial group. So there is something about stripping that away and having the courage to strip that away and having the courage to have open discussions. But one of the things, as you said, everyone is tired about the discussions, but that openness leading to change and taking action. I've just rambled. I'm going to stop now, but that's what I was left with when hearing you say that.
Yeah. As artists, and it's not just because of what's happened in the last year, although it becomes more pointed, but I know as an artist, ever since being at drama school back in the late 70s, that I couldn't just be an artist, because I was never ever seeing myself reflected in the plays I read, in the plays I went to see, not only in terms of being reflected as a presence on stage, but in the stories and the narratives and the cultures that I was brought up in and around. So me as an artist, and I know Amantha shares this as well, we don't do art in a vacuum. So our art is very much influenced by the stance and the political stance that we have, and the things that we do within the community. We don't just do art. We work with and within the community and do other things. And often, as we did last year with a lot of the marches and demonstration in Oxford, help to bring some art into the activism, so that you can do bits of presentation, bits of things to highlight things. So art isn't just for me personally, isn't just an escapism, a mechanism to escape and be somebody else or to be famous. Art is part of my life and part of reflecting back my life and part of the process of wanting to see change happen and to make change happen.
And I also see it as a way of amplifying voices and perspectives that we, sadly, because of the way society is made up, that we just aren't hearing. The voices are there, they're speaking, but they're not getting the focus.
I think in preparing this event, the panel, I think with all of you, when we talked at some point, we're talking about education and the education system and what we would like to see or we would hope to see, and obviously also your concrete, your specific projects. But I think it made me reflect a lot on my own work that I'm doing when it comes to my research on Carnival, and thinking about how much Caribbean Carnival has become part of British culture and cities, be it Cowley Row Carnival in Oxford, be it Notting Hill Carnival or Hackney Carnival, and all the smaller carnivals all over London. And at the same time, no student would ever, or if you don't have a very a teacher who would spend their time in doing the research, would ever get to know about Calypso or Steel Pan and that rich heritage that comes with Carnival, traditional masks, what it means to perform a mask character. I just remember when I talked to Oxford Brooks about these ideas, some people who were engaging with Cowley Row Carnival, it was also not very clear what makes Carnival different from other street festivals. And for me, that was shocking, seeing that it's such a huge part of the city and life in these cities. So, as you said, the default is a very different one at schools, but the default should definitely include in the UK system that you hear, that you know about Steel Pan, just as Haroun could probably describe and very much give us an insight how it developed, despite not having the support from institutions, from funding bodies and so on, and still developing into this huge part of the cultural industries when it comes to Carnival. Haroun, would you like to probably tell us a little bit more about that? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, let Haroun go first.
Well, okay. Just before I go to that, just to pick up on both things that both Euton and Amantha said, I think the report you're referring to is the Sewell report, which actually paints a really dreadful picture of what reality is. It is nothing like that. Our steel band, our members of our band are stopped nearly every night. They are harassed. We have had that numerous times. But this is exactly what the Calypsonian Alexander the Great was saying in it, that you use the images of people. Who did that panel have? It had very, very well-known Black and Asian people in that panel. Mm-hmm. And yet they seem to have disregarded so many of the day-to-day events that's taking place. But I think the point that you make, Euton, as well, about what we call in nostalgia, the calibrating the skin tones, which is one of the problems that we're dealing really severely with in societies, because that is splitting families. In other words, preference being given in a family for the whiter looking child and the blacker one. This is apartheid. This is what cities bring. I was really pleased to see on the demo on Saturday, so many placards walking in support of Palestine, showing no apartheid. Apartheid has destroyed countries, and it continues to breed. In terms of steel band, this is exactly what steel band players faced in Trinidad. I mean, I would thank my mother every day of my life that she allowed us to go in a panyard to play. It was associated with black, always associated with crime and robbery and so on. And you went into a panyard, you basically were thrown out of school. And it developed really, really with a two-tier society. It was only when it gained recognition did we start to see the more affluent sorts of society coming in. To go back very quickly, and just because I'm aware of your time as well, Hannah, can I just show those two slides? The middle one, which shows Russell Henderson at Notting Hill Carnival in 19... Are you able to show it, or shall I try? Let me just quickly see.
Yes, please, if you could try.
Okay, so that's the first one here with Priti Patel. I'll just play. Are you all able to see it?
No, we can't see the slide, but probably if you play.
Okay, just the music. I'll play just 30 seconds of it and then move to the steel band.
When you had secret meetings in his reign, you were told your actions were beyond debate. Accused of breaching the ministerial code, you resigned, but your ambition never slowed. We now live in a world of plurality, but it appears you endorse the brutality of sending people to places where they've never been, though they pay their taxes and serve country and queen. Your name is pretty, and you feel so pretty, but tell me, do you really feel pretty with it? People call you pretty, but I think it's a pity that your heart appears to be as ugly as sin.
Okay. And the other one I just want to show, this is, can you see this? This is...
We can't see the slide.
Okay, let me try. Is any better now?
Not as yet.
Is that showing now?
I will try to share it from here.
How about now?
Oh,
No?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is Russell Henderson, who passed away just recently, with Sterling Bethencourt, who was the person that founded our Steelband Nostalgia. 1965, with just 3 people. Look at where we are today. This is Mangrove. I'll just move this along a little bit. 2 seconds. Okay, that goes on for another 10 minutes. So I'm gonna stop that there, but just to show you a little bit. Now, I feel that having something, a steel band like this, coming into Oxford, being able to do more joint projects between cities, being able to open up Carnival, take it down the street, and I absolutely stress, Carnival has got to stay out of a park. It's got, yes, part of it could be there, but it has to go through the street. It started from emancipation, when slaves were allowed to come onto the street. Historically, that is the heart of it. And many, many times attempts have been made, particularly by the present government and the Prime Minister when he was mayor, to put a stop to Notting Hill Carnival. In protest, none of the steel bands went on the road, and I hope we continue to do that. Steel band has got to stay on the street. If it stays on the street the whole of Carnival, I think we stand a far better chance of engaging with the whole community. When you see a steel band like that, and to think that they've developed with barely little funding from arts councils, they've done it off their own strengths. The cost of that is phenomenal. 120 people, nearly 1,000 fans inside there, finding places to rehearse, being able to do that without music. And then just imagine for 1 minute, you on one side of that band, the person 5 places away from you, you can't hear what that person's playing. It has to be done purely from rhythm. and you're dealing with this with, there is so much to learn. There's so much to develop in terms of education. We have done projects in Nostalgia ourselves, looking at the effect of this on children's education, and you would be amazed. When you divide classes in two and you allow half to play steel band and the other conventional instrument, and you swap them around 2 years later, the kids that have played band, their memory is so well developed. There are many, many subjects. My own daughter, I mean, had such a poor memory, and I have to say, thank God the steel band, it did so much for her life. Just one thing I want to say before I leave this still, because, and we come back to, as we approach a general discussion, again, to pick up on what Euton said, the point about the subtlety and racism that we have embedded in society today isn't something that you're going to see quite easily. It's something that is disguised in many jobs. I did my own commission when I was at Public Health England, and you would be appalled at what the results of that came out with. I would see it at interviews that when a Black kid came in for an interview, how the panel reacted. My own daughter came out of universities with distinction, one of the three of them, and could not get a job for not even an interview for a year. And by chance, she changed her surname, the last letter of her surname, S-H-A-H to S-H-A-W, got an interview and got the job. And when you have to do that, it tells you a lot about society and what is still there today. I'll stop and let the others get on with it. Pass it over back to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much. We have now still half an hour. This event is going to go until 1:30. So do share your questions. We already have some questions in the chat shared by some of our participants. I would just read them, and we can also jump from there if you want to add something. Of course, just let me know. So Pauline was definitely interested to know more about this connection that you mentioned, Haroun, about Lord Woodbine and the Beatles. And I think that has been going around quite a lot, and it's a very interesting topic. So if you could give us a little bit more insight.
Okay, can I first of all, we have a full article written on that. I didn't get a chance to put up our slide with all of our activities that's going on at the moment. Nostalgia, we have about 15 projects running. One is very strong political campaign that we have, but one of them we have is setting up of the International Journal of Carnival Arts. And the idea is that we feel that Carnival is so poorly documented. Russell Henderson, who I just mentioned, if I want to learn about Russ Henderson, I have to go back to the obituary in the Times, in the Guardian, and newspapers like that. There is very little. Yet he was a jazz musician that started the steel band, the Notting Hill Carnival. People like Louis Armstrong, the great masters of jazz, came to London to see him. Very, very little is written, documented about these people. So when I caught on to this story, one night I was traveling back from steel band practice about 1 o'clock in the morning and heard an interview with James McGrath on BBC Radio Liverpool. And I was so excited, I couldn't even drive the car. I pulled the car to the side of the road to listen to this interview. James was just doing his PhD on the music of the Beatles, and kept seeing all these people written Lord and so, and he thought that these were people in the House of Lord. This is the title that Calypsonians use, like Lord Kitchener, Lord Woodbine was one of them, the Mighty Sparrow, and so on. And I called James the following day. I didn't even know I managed to get in touch with him and brought him to speak at the conference. And since that, I managed to link up with Lord Woodbine's daughter. Sadly, she's one of the few siblings, his children, that survived the race riots in Liverpool. Their house was burnt to the ground and he died. She's around. James came, and James continued his PhD on the music of the Beatles and managed to get to the BBC studios and the newspapers, many of them like The Guardian, The Times, The Observer at the time. And if you look at these early pictures of the Beatles, you will see the four of them, Paul McCartney, certainly, and John Lennon, who were the two that were very keen, but the four of them there. In the middle, you see a space, and that space is brushed out, airbrushed. it was not shown in the newspaper. The fact that you might have a black man associated with the most popular, perhaps pop group ever in the world was something that didn't fit the people that marketed them. Lord Woodbine taught them. Initially, he used to play steel band, he used to sing calypso. He left London and moved to Liverpool. And he used to sing in clubs like the Jacaranda and so on. And they would come up, these two young lads, right up to his pan. And he tried teaching them to play pan. They didn't do very well with it. But then they brought their guitar and he started showing them the chords. He helped them write their first music. He mentored them. He took them with his own car to Hamburg and performed with them. And I don't think that story is known in the British public. It is Calypsonian that actually laid the ground, the seeds for one of the most famous pop groups ever. And you listen to a lot of British pop music and you hear the steel band in the background, but you don't really see to the forefront. It's something that they seem to, I mean, take our own experience. Sorry, I'm going on a little bit here. We were selected, Nostalgia, to represent Britain as in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics in 2012. We aren't a very good steel band by any means, but I think we had the history behind us. And we rehearsed from December right on till July, going down there 4 times a week. We were there on the dress rehearsal the evening before. The night of the opening ceremony, when the cameras came on to the group before us, and they skipped us and went to the Pearlies next. It was like the society isn't even ready to show this, you know? How else do you interpret that? How could you include us up to the day before? But the night of it, we are not on television. Our pictures, I was gonna show some of these today, but we didn't have the time, of us performing comes from television stations in China and all over the world. Clarice Solandi had mask costumes alongside us. And she wasn't shown either. And I showed a slide there, which I didn't go into, of Keith Khan. Keith was a student at Middlesex University. He was the one that choreographed the Millennium Ceremonies, the Dome, the Queen's coronation, Manchester Commonwealth Games 220. He was selected to choreograph the Olympics. Carnival was going there until 2011. Suddenly it was taken out and Danny Boyle was given the show. And Carnival barely was just a residual part of it that appeared in the games. So I think we have a lot of work to do in getting these stories out. And that's why I would like you to have a look at that journal sometime. It's on the website. I could pass that on to Hannah. She's a member of the editorial board now. It's in volume 2 and the full story is written by James McGrath.
Thank you so much, Haroun. Maybe we move on to Fiona's question, if that is all right. It's more like a statement that I think it gives us a good opportunity to discuss this a little bit further. So what she was sharing with us is that she's saying the impact of Oxbridge graduates on the arts has also to be looked at critically as it continues to enforce a particular tradition and enable this already entitled voice to occupy opportunities and what career ladders there are, which in themselves aren't transparent enough, but about who you know, these networks that work to the benefit and favor of those people then. So we have had a lot of talk during the festival as well, mentoring programs, informal networks, and so on. So I would, if you would like to comment, I don't know, Euton and Amantha, or first, and then probably Haroun.
Yeah, here in Oxford, none of the black-led arts organisations are co-funded by either the local authority or Arts Council England. So again, we're having to fight all the time for finances to make work, and also we own none of the theatre buildings, so we always also have to be begging to have our work or hiring spaces to put our work on. And that's why, you know, our need for a cultural centre here in the city is vital. Most, I'll put in bracket, decent cities with a diverse African Caribbean community have a cultural centre. So why shouldn't Oxford have one?
This is a fight that's been going on for decades and decades, seeing growing up here from the time they would have had with some of the first clubs in the mid-50s to now. And that is something that there is this new energy to push for. Again, we just keep pushing for this. And I take Euton's exasperation that we're still having this conversation. We're still almost asking for space, almost asking for recognition. And just hearing everything that Haroun's just shared, it's not surprising, but it's painful. And it's painful to hear that.
I wonder if I could just add to what Euton and Amantha is saying. One of the things that we did in London that you might like to look into, if you haven't been, anybody that's listening to the Carnival Village, the Tabernacle in London, please come. Everybody's got to see that building. It's not just the building, it's the history of that building. When the race riots were taking place all in the 60s, the only way to run away was to shelter in this church, the Tabernacle. Built in the 1880s, it was by Jesuit priests, but right from the very start, it was one of these churches that 150 years last year, that had freedom for every religion. Regardless of who you were, you could come and pray in that church. It was a normal Catholic church. And because of that freedom to hide in there, the police actually, the whole thing was just left and it started getting very dilapidated. The roof was leaking. You go in there would be goats and chickens and all sorts of, it was so dilapidated. So the council wanted to pull it down. And the Caribbean community surrounded that building and said, we don't care how we're going to do it. We're going to save that building, and started raising funds for it. And the funds were raised. Eventually, it was supported by Arts Council England and the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. And today it stands a real shrine to carnival arts, to me, to all parts of the world. I wonder, Euton and Amantha, whether an old church that isn't used, or you could approach a church to actually get, because I think you're absolutely right. If you have something like this with a focus, it draws people to that center. You can have music, you have a coffee bar, but it breeds discussion, it breeds, and it more than anything else, I find in London, it brings students in. I can proudly say that our last Carnival conference, 18 students went off to university to read aspects of carnival arts in some of the top universities as a result of that support that they were given there. We are now trying to work at a younger age to get more kids involved in their careers, helping them to choose their A-level so they get into the right subjects. If I could just get 1 minute to go, and I'm staying too long, I'm sorry. I've had a lot of involvement with Cambridge, not Oxford, Hannah. And the reason for that was Cambridge University has a steel band. And that steel band was started by a girl from Trinidad who was asked why she was so depressed at university. And she said, we haven't got music, we haven't got a steel band here. And she was told by her college, go and start it. And she did, with support from Notting Hill Carnival. That steel band started. Now, so I managed to get that steel band to play at our last conference in London, and a few of the students there to give a talk. And what they told me wasn't very pleasant at all, in that they felt that the steel band was a showpiece for the university. It was meant to show no more than they would. Whereas in London, if we spend £10 on getting a ticket, we would feel we really have achieved something. £200 for a ticket there. Who came into these steel band performances at the balls? White middle-class kids who really had no show, no interest whatsoever in the steel band. It was purely there as a show. And that's what all the band members told me. And in fact, it went further that some of them got so interested in band, they wanted to do their dissertations, their master's thesis. I have supervised students that I haven't even met. We've done it by purely on the internet because they had no supervision from there. How can you have a steel band as a showpiece, but you refuse to have a course that actually teaches the background to this music? In Middlesex, we've linked the two very strongly together. We have jazz, we have all forms of music in which steel band participates. If you do something like that at Oxford, I would strongly suggest right from the start, you try and link it with the community and don't let that model that developed in Cambridge go very far, because that Steelband is now in crisis. The leader of that band leaves next year, she finishes her thesis, and it's likely to fall apart. And it's going to fall apart if it's formed in such an artificial way. Do it with the community, perhaps with Oxford Brookes, with Oxford University and the community centres, and get participation of all. And the goal must be to promote the Cowley Road Carnival. That's the manifestation of your hard work.
We'll take the band.
Inspiring, Haroun. And yes, we need to do those things. We need to push the Cowley Road Carnival here to have more of an African heritage tradition within it. We're trying to raise funds at the moment to purchase steel pans so we can actually start here in Oxford. And we have support from Brookes itself and from some of the university museums. So there's a willingness there. It's just getting the final hand in the pocket and the cash out, and we're ready to go.
And if there's anything I could do to help that, I would be really likely. I would love to bring our steel band to Oxford. My daughter will be a university student there in September, and she plays with Mangrove and Panorama, so she'd be delighted to be involved.
Yes.
Yes.
Please bring Mangrove. That's a yes, please.
I think that's a great kind of overview, or kind of looking at it from that perspective. What can Oxford Brookes as an institution do? What can it provide? But also, as you all mentioned now, it's about the community work that has to happen. It is about the funds that have to be available, and also events such as these that kind of bring us together and make it really possible to look at plans for the future. And hopefully that will lead to more of a presence of steel pan in the carnival, but also generally of the cultural forms of not just Trinidad, but Caribbean carnival as part of Cowley Road. So we just have some comments in the chat, and I'm just going to read them out. Michelle just mentioned that city and council may have some funds they could contribute. I'm just also reading this because I know you will get in touch with all the people who've been here, hopefully after this event. And I think it's a good way of showing this is not just a panel to discuss or platform to discuss, but actually to link and really make things happen. I think that should be our focus with such events. Daniela is also saying she would love to discuss further how Brookes can help, and also through the Creative Industries Network, because that is also one of the purposes of this network, to bring together researchers, bring together practitioners, community organizations, and so on. And I do think that this is a good point to wrap up. If you probably want to say some final comments, something that has still not been, or that you would want to still include or touch on, or just a final word of the panelists, and then we will have a final performance by Euton and Amantha. So yes, Haroun, you would like to start?
I would like to ask a question, because I've never lived in Oxford, and I have been many times but not lived there. But my visit state, and purely through science, it gives me the clear indication that you have so much industry there. Cars were the well-known one, which is why so many move. But I know that there's a lot going on in science and IT and robotics and so on. And I wonder if there's a way to try and involve these companies, these industries, in Carnival in any way at all, whether it might actually help to secure funding. We never approached this until COVID came in Notting Hill. And last year, I'm on the Notting Hill Carnival board, as Hannah mentioned. When we were struck for funds, I was amazed how industry came out and supported us. Samsung alone gave us 100,000. And we then went on to IT companies that put up a 450,000. Over 800,000 was raised. It was the first carnival. We actually had a surplus of 120,000, which went back to the performing bands. That has never happened. So I have a feeling that if we approach these companies, and you have so much there in Oxford, you might find that this might be one avenue that needs to be explored. I think you have to make the case. You have to show them how arts will benefit them. Don't just put a proposal to them, but show them how, because Arts Council England is absolutely inundated with requests, and they are supporting mostly the bigger events and the bigger centers that to try and save them from closure. And they're not going to support the smaller events. But maybe this is the time to industry, and being so successful last year, our first virtual carnival, it's something that might be possible to explore with the University of Oxford Brookes, perhaps, and industry.
And just adding to that comment in the chat by Fiona, also putting a plea on to highlight and share the immense skills of designers and makers honed in Carnival. They have shaped and informed the careers of a number of designers, she says, for performance, but they themselves are invisible as experts in their craft. And it's such an important point to highlight. And now I hand on for a final word to Euton and Amantha.
Just that we've talked a lot about the need for change. We've talked a lot about the lack of education, the lack of history and understanding. So you could end up feeling that we're all depressed about it and there's no hope. There's no reason to get out of bed tomorrow morning and get on with life, because nothing will change. But there is hope, and so we're going to end with a poem called Hope. Hope. So much hangs on such a small word. Such a small word, yet filled with so much promise, so much hope.
Hope.
Hope gives rise to possibilities.
Hope.
Hope provides a sense of purpose. Hope is that thing which makes you face each and every day. To hope is to dream. To hope is to have faith. To hope is to believe. But beware. To hope implies to take action, to do something. It takes effort. To hope is hard work. So be prepared to graft. For such a small word, it is often hard to achieve. But to not try is not worth contemplating. I need you to hope. Hope is enlightenment. So fill your thoughts with 1,000 hopes. For hope induces self-respect, dignity, pride. I need you to hope.
Celebrate, people of color. Celebrate, people of the world. Celebrate humanity. Celebrate and rejoice.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much to all panelists and for the audience for your participation. Thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye. Thank you.